What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the most authentic place in sports, the Sports Headline Show. I am your host, Sean Davis. We got a special edition of the pod for you guys here today. Today's show, we're going to have my guy, Jason Timpf from the Volume Network. He's going to come on here and discuss the NBA season with us. It's going to be a fun time, and I'll make sure you guys go check out all of his work. He does great stuff over at the Volume. But it's going to be a fun conversation. We're going to dive into all things NBA. Obviously, we're going to discuss a little bit of the Lakers, talk about my obsession, I guess, with the Suns and why I think they're overrated, all that and more. But make sure you guys subscribe. And with that being said, let's get into it. All right, I want to welcome you guys into my interview with my guy, Jason Timpf from the Volume. I almost said The Athletic for some weird reason, but Jason, my guy, thanks for hopping on with me, man. Is really excited to talk some basketball with you, man.
Hey, it's a new day and age. There's like a million sports media companies. It genuinely does get confusing. But hey, I mean, like, as a guy, you're a big Lakers fan. I mean, it's been a pretty boring summer for the Lakers. Are you ready to actually watch some basketball? I think we'll actually have more Lakers stuff to talk about starting next Tuesday than we did in the entire offseason last year. It's crazy.
And this is the first time in the LeBron James era we've been able to say that. Where
yeah, exactly.
There's nothing to talk. There's no drama. I was talking to Trevor, I think, yesterday. Because before we did the Lakers Nation pod, he was like, dude, there's absolutely nothing to talk about. I'm like, yeah, because right around now, we're still talking about Russell Westbrook trade rumors last year. And the most controversial thing we have is a Clippers employer or something starting something with Austin Reeves and Taylor. So like, that's the most you got.
Talk about backfiring a prank. All you did is do the guy a favor, man. I don't know what else. Right. I don't know what else to tell you. But yeah, like last year, it's funny because the two biggest fan bases in the NBA really are the Lakers and the Warriors. Yeah. And like last summer was just so busy with like all the buzz surrounding the Warriors and them being defending champs. And then obviously the constant Lakers rumors. It legitimately was far more challenging to do our job this summer. Just because there was less going on. And then all the trades kind of just like lingered with no new intel. It was genuinely a boring offseason, but you could tell like it was crazy. The second that Dame trade went down, it was like everything just kicked back into high gear and it felt like the NBA was back.
Yeah, man, did I do that? Because like you said, it felt like we went about a month where even the Dame stuff, we knew it was still there, but the weekly update was Portland's still not going to trade him to Miami. Miami's not budging. Okay, cool. It gets to a point where it's not an update anymore. You're just regurgitating the same thing you said 7 days ago.
Yeah, let's just keep arguing the same back and forth whether or not Dame deserves to go there for the 17th time this summer.
Yeah. And then I guess we can kind of start off here. The James Harden thing with the Clippers, another situation where we kind of got the same exact update for the past 3 months where the Clippers are the main target or whatever, but the Clippers are, for some reason, in my opinion, I think it's kind of crazy that they're so heavy against budging off of Terrence Mann, where Terrence Mann he's not going to be the guy that's playing 25, 30 minutes a night, in my eyes. Is that crazy to think about that? Or what are your thoughts in general on the Harden thing?
I actually go the opposite way on that. And I'm not over here trying to overrate Terrence Mann. I just think like when I watch the Clippers, I have a hard time seeing a very specific need for what James Harden brings to the table.
Sure.
Like this is a team that really needed rim pressure and overall like speed and quickness on the perimeter. And they added that, you know, with Kenyon Martin Jr. and with Russ and with Terrence Mann obviously growing as a player as he kind of enters into his prime, and bringing in another kind of like weird player that seems to have issues in the postseason, that doesn't seem to make a ton of sense within their defensive scheme either. Like, I don't understand what I wonder if this is one of those things where like James Harden wants the Clippers, but the Clippers are like, oh man, like we just can't make a deal with Daryl James. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and that is a good point. I'm not even necessarily arguing, because I am with you in that regard. That does it make a ton of sense? No, because that's not quite what they need, right? And I think Terrence Mann being that spark plug, just quick, athletic energy guy can really help them. Mm-hmm. But like the fact that you're just so resistant, like, oh my God, he's a complete, like kind of like what the Raptors did, except the Raptors, it's Scotty Barnes, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Like, James Harden,
different player.
James Harden is still what, top 30 player, and that's if you're lower on James Harden.
Yeah, I'd put him right around 30, I think. He's still a very, very good regular season player. I think like the ship has sailed on him, like suddenly becoming a deeply impactful playoff player. But like in terms of eating innings, running your offense, putting up numbers, and giving you a chance to win in the regular season, he's actually probably still in the top 20. But yeah, like when you start to like
in playoff impact, that's where he dropped for sure.
Well, there were two just unbelievably amazing games last year that kind of threw everybody off the scent that he was like legit terrible in all of the other games. And I almost think about that from the standpoint of the Sixers, and I go the direction of thinking like at a certain point, would you be better off having like just a role player who can defend and shoot threes at guard? And just running more of your offense through Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, because like it just like James Harden literally could not finish at the rim last year in the playoffs. He shot like 35% at the rim. That's a huge sign of a decline. And this was in a season where I expected him to have more of a revenge type of campaign, right? Like that was my big take going into the season. And he legitimately had a very good regular season, led the league in assists, and was a very efficient ISO and pick and roll player next to Joel Embiid in that secondary role. But like if there was one season for him to pop in the postseason, it was last year, and it didn't happen. So like I would imagine that his value is at an all-time low there.
So if you take out his 2 dunks that he made in the playoffs last year, he had 46 layups. He shot 32.6% at the rim. And I know we're going to talk about the Lakers later, but like that's been my biggest gripe with D'Lo stance, which I had no clue existed. Was my biggest gripe with D'Lo was he can't consistently put pressure on the rim, and when he's inconsistent even at finishing. But that's why I've been so high on D'Lo this preseason, because
he is finishing
great at the rim. He's getting to the rim more, and it just opens up your playmaking game more, which is another reason why I've been hesitant to call D'Lo a great playmaker. But yeah, like you said, Harden's finishing just dropped. I think it kind of dropped after the first hamstring issue. It really started to drop there.
He has not been able to regain whatever that was, that extra pop that he had there. Yeah. And again, like I feel like I'm pontificating here, but if I had to guess, I would think like just with his lifestyle, the cliff just came a little bit earlier for him, if that makes sense.
Great Max Kellerman reference there. Shout out to Max. So I wanted to start with this question, but we kind of, because of the offseason talk, I went with that one first. If you don't mind me asking, because I don't think I ever found out, I don't know if you've ever talked about it. How did you get your start at the Volume?
So I was always a huge basketball fan, and I would come on Twitter and just talk. And like it's funny, my wife played college basketball.
You played college too, right?
I did too. Yeah, my wife and I both played at the small school level. So she played D3 and I played NAIA D1.
Okay.
But like I was completely obsessed, and my wife was like one of those people that like got out and just legitimately doesn't care about basketball anymore. and so, which is totally fine, But like it was one of those things where I would go on to Twitter to talk basketball because nobody in my friends and family would talk basketball. And then shout out Jason Maples, who's not on Twitter anymore. One day he goes, "Hey man, like you want to hop on my show?" And so I did, and I immediately was like, "This is awesome! I got to do this right away." So like I immediately started a podcast, and then it kind of morphed into like a 2 podcasts in one, because I had like my own solo thing where I was covering the whole NBA, but then I'd also go with Raj, and we'd do the State of the Lakers podcast. And then what kind of worked out magically for us was Spaces, and Spaces in a weird way is like the most powerful algorithm. Because if you enter the space, all of your followers see the space. And so, and it's right on the top of your feed. And so like we would just get these crazy crowds after games. And that was kind of how I originally, there was some really bad game where we hit some big number. And then I ended up one of the people here. Probably one of the Westbrook games, but we ended up crashing the space. So like we got up over like 7,000 people, and then it like crashed. And then I woke up the next morning at like 10 a.m. because I was up super late the night before, and I had a bunch of messages and calls from this guy who worked at the Volume, and then they reached out, and then we worked out a deal. But like it was essentially just like I had envisioned a much a different path. But that's the beauty of this business now is like anybody can do it from the comfort of their home and make a good product if they put in the work. And man, like if you just go back like 7-8 years ago, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
And so I feel very fortunate to have had this, kind of idea in this era, because I feel like this is the era for the passionate people out there that want to try to make something happen. It feels like the right time,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Spaces is like, it's a beautiful thing, but it also be like just this pesky annoyance at the same time. It's oh my gosh, especially after like a loss or something. Oh man, I already know the Spaces can be brutal.
It can get ugly.
Like coach, I don't know how my guy like Shub and coaches then they do it, because every game, like, oh man, like you gotta find a way to monetize it or something. I'm not gonna listen to 1,000 people shouting the same thing. Oh, AD sucks or AD sucks. I'm not gonna listen to that for 3 hours straight from 1,000 different people. But like you said, you can get these massive crowds and these just random people in your spaces that can lead to a bunch of other great stuff. And that's like where the good side of social media can come in for sure.
Yeah, it was actually kind of an interesting dynamic because like Raj and I caught like a little window of spaces where it worked really for us because no one was really doing it. And we were just recording a podcast on Spaces. That's all we were doing. Like we did occasionally let on guests at the end of the show to like ask a question, but like we were primarily just doing the two of us. And so as a result of that, like we were kind of operating as a podcast that had more exposure. But like really the truth is towards the tail end, we were starting to get run over by these like big mob sessions where it's like there's 15 people on the top and like they're all talking and they're all yelling at each other and stuff. And like, and the truth of the matter is that's a big part of why you don't see too many major media companies using Spaces, is it is really difficult to monetize when it's kind of like the Wild West and anything can happen on that platform. So we kind of, again, a lot of things just kind of randomly fell into place on that front.
Yeah. Well, first off, that's awesome for you, and congrats, of course. But yeah, like that's another reason why I don't do Spaces as much, because again, like it almost becomes a waste of time. And it's not like you grow a ton of followers unless you get like Kevin Durant in your space or something, which was a crazy night, by the way. Unless you get like KD or somebody ridiculous in your space, you're not getting a ton of new followers, because those are your followers more often than not in your space. So
I think the two platforms that I would highly recommend every content creator make sure that they're using are YouTube and TikTok. Because those YouTube has built-in monetization if you do get to a certain point, but they've got a great algorithm based on watch time. If your watch time is good, it gets recommended to more people. So like it's an algorithm that works in that direction. And then TikTok is the same thing. I'm growing a separate podcast that covers Star Wars and other big lore type stuff like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and stuff and movies and stuff. And like I use TikTok and I get a significant amount of traffic from there. So like those are the two ones that I would recommend, because I agree Spaces has become a completely different ball game at this point. But yeah, like YouTube and TikTok are just free tools. They're free that give you a ton of extra exposure. You have to make sure that you're using those platforms. Yeah, man. Like it's again, like the tools are right there in your hands these days. Like it's crazy the access that we have right now.
Even for like an athlete, so like for the varsity high school team that I coach, I made it mandatory. Like every player has to have a Twitter, because literally that's how the coaches hit you up. That's like social media can be so good. It like in the sports world, I feel like we only highlight the downside of it. We're like, you look at 80%, maybe not 80%, but you look at definitely a large majority of the either independent media guys or like top of the top media guys. A lot of it is because of social media, or at least I'll speak for myself. So like it can be so good. And I do think we only highlight like the negatives of it a little bit.
For sure. And like I always like, it's easy to you have your wheelhouse, right? And like you got to kind of stay in your wheelhouse, but you also have to pay attention to what other people are doing. Like another guy I think who does an amazing job on social media is Kevin O'Connor. Like
Caleb is the best at getting reaction.
Oh my gosh, like he's just he has these massive followings on all these platforms because he's just always putting out content. And like it's usually just like a video of a basketball player doing something with like a take attached to it. And it's like it's something simple like that just gets him in here. And you got to think it's all about hitting, you got to be hitting singles, right? Like you're trying to every day you put on a show, if you gain 1 subscriber to your show and you do 200 in a year, because you're doing 4 or 5 a week, you're going to add 200 subscribers to your show, which is again, and then you might have these big home runs, right? You might have a big video that goes viral. You might have a big social media clip that does well, but like you got to hit the singles along the way too. I used to sell real estate before I got into this, and that's the business. Like, it's not about looking at the individual task. It's like this week, did I do all the right things? And in the big picture, it almost always pans out for you if you're putting in the work.
So basically, guys, what Jason just said, find a clip of Chet Holmgren dunking the ball and say Chet Holmgren's the best basketball player ever, and you'll gain 100,000 views for the wrong. You might be for the wrong reasons.
It'd have you a pretty nice dunk. I don't know.
Yeah. Really quick before we get to more of the NBA, actual NBA stuff, do you have any advice for anybody that wants to join like our field or this industry?
Put in the work. The downside of what I just described is that it's a flooded field. Like there are just like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of podcasts. Like every NBA team now has like 20 to 30 people that are covering it on a daily basis, either via podcast or writing or things like that. And so like if you're going to separate yourself, you have to put in the work. And again, it goes both ways. Like, one, don't try to be something you're not. Like, be yourself. And because they're not coming to hear a very specific type of analysis that they're attracted to. They're attracted to your voice and the way that you talk about the game and your specific point of view. So like, lean into who you are, but do the work. Like there are a lot of tools that are available that are not expensive. Like NBA.com, if you learn how to use it, has incredible statistical tools. Cleaning the glass is, I want to say, is like $5 a month or something like that. Like it's awesome. And it's such a great tool like that you can get to lineup data and you can sort for half court offense and stuff. There are some more expensive tools out there if you're willing to invest, but like take advantage of the stuff that's like right there at your fingertips, that's easy to get to, and put in the work. Like, let your passion shine through. If you're a diehard Nuggets fan and you want to cover the Nuggets, don't let anybody know more about the Nuggets than you. Like, put in the work, and you will separate yourself. That's the beauty of these algorithms, and the way that this all works is it's like a true meritocracy in that sense. Like, literally, like, there's views. You can see, this is how many views we got. This is my watch time. This is like, you have such clear, that's why I love YouTube. Their analytics are amazing. You know exactly how many people are clicking versus how many people saw your thumbnail. You know exactly how long people stayed. You can see data in a bigger picture. So it's like, I'm a big believer in paying attention to that data and leaning into what you're good at. But the work will shine through is the big thing that I would say is, like, in a flooded field, you got to work hard.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, let's segue into some NBA talk, what people mostly came here for, although I think you'll find the first 18 minutes or so really, really informative. That's the word I was looking for. The Phoenix Suns. I kind of want to start here first because I have been labeled this Phoenix Suns hater, and I want to like get my point out first, and I'm very curious to hear what your thoughts are. My only problem with the Suns has been that I don't think it's accurate to put them on a pedestal higher than a team like the Lakers, for example, right? You had a great tweet, I want to say about a week ago, where I think it was something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing, so please correct me if I screw anything up. It was like Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal took 16 jumpers. I want to say 15 of them were pull-up jumpers. Only one was catch and shoot. I think it was from Bradley Beal. And they shot 9 for 15 on said pull-up jumpers. And when I saw that tweet, my point exactly after that was, there is no way that in a playoff setting, you can convince me they're going to, hit those same shots with added difficulty. And, we all know how, like, intense the playoff defenses can get, especially if you face, like, even Denver had a really good playoff defense. Denver, Memphis with everybody healthy, the Lakers, etc. There's no way you can convince me they're going to be able to do that to that consistency to win 4 times, and not even talking about the defense, but to do that 4 times to win one playoff series, but to do that for 16 games. I just don't understand like the confidence in that ability. And then, like I said, we haven't even talked about the defense yet. So that they're contenders in my eyes, but to put them in like Denver category or like on Denver's level or a step above the Lakers, in my opinion, is ridiculous. What do you have to say about that?
I 100% agree. And that doesn't mean that I don't think the Suns can win the title. I have them in my top tier of contenders, but I think they are a clear number 5 behind the Lakers, the Nuggets, and the Celtics and the Bucks. And the main reason why is all 4 of those teams have a clear winning identity, right?
Yeah.
Like Boston is just going to be this hellacious perimeter defense team that has a ton of aggregate talent, but you can already tell that they're going to be great on both ends of the floor, right? You look at the Milwaukee Bucks, and it's like now they've given up a little bit of their defensive ceiling, but they have like one of the best half court shot creators in the league when he's healthy in Damian Lillard, right? Denver potentially the most unguardable offense in the NBA. And the Lakers potentially the best defense in the NBA, right? And they all have this identity. And the identity for Phoenix is that they're a pull-up jump shooting team. Like that's literally what they are. And the specific stat that I put in that tweet, if I remember correctly, was that 16 of their 21 shot attempts were jumpers, and 15 of those 16 were pull-up jump shots.
Okay.
And they made like 9 of them or whatever. And what's wild about that is like they're not playing drive and kick, let's get wide open layups and threes offense. They're playing your turn, my turn. One of us is going to come off of a wide pin down or a dribble handoff or a ball screen, and we're going to look to take a pull-up jump shot. And they are going to win a lot of regular season games this way. I don't think they're going to be as good as you remember that time when it was Kyrie and KD and right before the trade deadline last year, and they ripped off like 18 out of 20 or whatever.
Yeah.
And an important detail there is like Nick Claxton is sneaky one of the better defensive fulcrums in the Eastern Conference
players on the planet. Yeah.
Exactly. And like, I don't know that there's a single guy on the Suns that is above a veteran minimum contract whose like job it is in the NBA to defend or rebound. Like they don't really have that on the roster.
Your best bet was Aiden. Hopefully Frank Vogel got something out of Aiden, which we kind of saw in their championship run, or loss ultimately, but we kind of saw it then.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And like, it's tough because I look at you can't win with pull-up jump shooting. Like I understand that some people would push back on that and be like, well, people used to say that about the Warriors, and a couple of different things. Like for starters, they literally had the best defense in the NBA. Okay. Like they had the best defense in the NBA for, I think in 2015 and in 2016. So like,
I think they had in 22 too. If it wasn't the best, it was top 5 because their defense.
Yeah. I think they were right behind Boston in 22. I think they were number 2, if I remember correctly. But like, that's the thing is like, they were an elite top tier defensive team. And they jump shooting was not how they won games.
Yeah.
Jump shooting was like the lion's share of their offensive approach, but they were a defensive identity team. And like, that's the thing is like, not only are pull-up jump shots more difficult than the Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, we're constantly moving without the ball and getting a lot of catch and shoot shots for really good shooters and dunks and layups on the back line. They are taking much more difficult shots. And one of the things that I've always believed in is that as games get more physical, the skill elements of your game do become less reliable. Now, if your defense is also good enough to send them into that same spiral, then maybe you can make a few more shots than them and win. But if your defense can't do the same to them that they're capable of doing to you, you have that issue. And like, I have personally experienced this in my time playing basketball. If I have a very physical defensive matchup where like I'm a bigger guy, so I have to guard a lot of bigs, right? And like, and like if you're constantly handling drop steps to the middle of your chest and like handling box outs and chucking screeners and all this stuff, like you're going to be worn down and it's going to be harder to make those shots. And like, let's look at Kevin Durant. This is a guy who made 60% of his pull-up twos last year. Like that's outrageous. Like, and he did damn near the same thing the year before, but then for back-to-back seasons, he got into the postseason and his pull-up jump shots stopped falling. And it's not because KD's not a playoff performer. It's not because KD can't handle the physicality of the playoffs. It's just simply put, pull-up jump shooting is a really hard thing to do. And it's probably the first thing that's going to decline when you get into that physical environment. So like, I think it's totally fair for both of us to be like, I'm a little skeptical. That doesn't mean we don't think they can win the title. It just means we're a little skeptical, and that's a completely rational thought, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then KD, if you want to attribute this to his injuries and maybe a little bit less explosiveness, because I think prime Kevin Durant could get to the rim with like there's nothing you
Oh yeah.
can do, right? Like 1-2, like cross jab, I'm at the rim already, or I'm shooting a mid-range jumper. The fact that like if you look at synergy and like percentage ranked of like how much they're getting or how many of his shot attempts are at the rim in the playoffs, when he got there, it was great, but he only took 37 shots at the rim. And in terms of how much, like what percentage of that, of his overall shot data, only 16.6% of his shots are at the rim, which is in the 5th percentile. So, like, if I'm shooting only, so okay, just better way to put this, 84% of my shots are jumpers, and the playoffs are naturally a more physical game where if I'm facing the Lakers or whatever, I'm getting Vando, I'm getting AD on switches. You want to post me up, okay? I might get Braun, who's physical in the post. Like KD's, I don't want to say inability because he can still get there, but the inconsistency rather that he could get to the rim is another reason why I'm more skeptical. Because if you could tell me Kevin Durant 25% of his shot attempts even were at the rim. Okay, cool. I feel a lot better because then Kevin Durant has his secondary thing that he could semi-consistently go to, where I think we saw in the playoffs some of the playmaking trouble. So I think he's a fine playmaker, but I think you've seen in the past 2 years, you force him to be a playmaker. I think he'll turn the ball over more than he probably should. I think he's not this great defender that I think some social media tries to gas him up to be. I don't think they say he's a great one, but I think they say he's a above average one. I'm like, he's fine on defense, right? So when KD is this self-reliant pull-up jump shooter, that's where I look at KD and I'm like, another reason why I can't personally, I don't know where you have him at. That's why me personally, I can't put him in the top 5 of like a top 10 players list. He's still top 10 because, like you said, 60% on pull-up. Was it pull-up twos you said?
Pull-up twos last year, yeah.
Yeah, like that's insane. And Kevin Durant on a good day is like there's maybe one other player I'm taking over Kevin Durant at his absolute best, maybe two, and it's Jokic. That's the one for sure, right? I mean, that's probably Jokic over everybody at this point. But the fact that KD, in my opinion, can't get to the rim, I think is another big reason why I'm a little less higher on this Suns team than some other people may be.
Yeah, you made a good point talking about the volume versus his efficiency, because like he is making just about every shot he takes at the rim.
Yeah.
And what that tells me is that he's very, very selective about when he goes. And some of this is approach. Like pull-up jump shooting's weird because I feel like there's a difference between using a pull-up jump shot as a counter versus using it as like your bread and butter,
Yeah.
or actively hunting those types of shots.
Yeah.
But I'll give you an example. Let's say you come over the top of the screen and the defender's in trail position. You got a little bit of separation, and the big man is on his heels backpedaling towards the rim in his drop coverage. Like a lot of players see that and go, oh, he's backpedaling. I'm going right at this dude, you know? But like Kevin Durant is at a phase of his career where he just every single time is going to settle into a pull-up jump shot there. Because he almost sees that as the opening that he's targeting. There's nothing wrong with that. And by the way, if you were making 60% of them, I'd do the same thing. Like, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, if you're getting 1.2 points per shot without having to put your body on the line, like that makes perfect sense. I just think like, and to KD's credit, there were specifically game 3, if I remember correctly, in the Nuggets series, he had another nightmare shooting game from the perimeter, but he did put his head down and go to the rim a lot more. And he got a bunch of free throws. If I remember correctly, he shot like something like 15 free throws or something like that in that game. And he ended up with like 39 and they got the win. And I remember sitting there thinking, I'm like, that's what he needs to do in these cases. It's like, oh, like the jumper's not going. I got to start putting my head down and attacking the rim. You know what I mean? And I tend to think like you can't shoot more poorly relative to your normal averages than KD has done in the last 2 postseasons. So one of two things is true. It's either fluky or this is the new KD. And I just tend to lean a little bit more towards like approach and bad luck and a little bit of like, oh, I just got back from an injury right before the postseason. So like, I'm not quite in that peak shape that you want to be in. Like everybody who's like, I'm coming back from an Achilles injury right now. And like, I'm just a different player than I was.
How long ago?
I didn't tear it. I just had
Okay.
I had a really bad soreness that got to the point where I couldn't take off on it anymore. And so like I was just like, I'm shutting this down for like a month. And so I'm on my way back now, and like I'm just not the same player. Like I'm not the same guy I was before the injury. I will be, but it might take another month or two. You know what I mean? And so like that from that standpoint, like KD has had a little bit of this issue where he keeps getting hurt right before the postseason. So I want to give him just a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt as Kevin freaking Durant. So that's why I have him still at number 4 in the league, behind Steph, Giannis, and Jokic. But yeah, I'm like one more bad postseason run from being like, okay, he's over the hill.
Yeah. So first off, KD, like you said, it was game 3. Shot 12 for 31, 1 of 5 from 3, but he got to the line, like you said, 14 of 16 from the free throw line, and he had 9 rebounds, 8 assists, and no turnovers. And that's another big thing, because if I am getting to the rim more, I think KD is really good at like being this secondary playmaker where I'm getting to the rim. Okay, cool. Driving kick out to, on this team, Bradley Beal, right? Or on this team, Devin Booker, which would be absolutely scary if you left Devin Booker wide open, right? But even if you go back like with the pull-up jump shooting stuff, and I want to, bring up James Harden, prime James Harden. So MVP was 17, 18. Even this year, what Harden obviously took a bunch of shots, right? Only 12.6% of his jumpers were catch and shoot, which is nuts at how low that is. But he still got to the rim at 34.2% of his shots were at the rim still. So that is another reason why James Harden's one of the best playmakers of the last decade or so. And it's just another element to where, okay, if I am cold from 3 tonight, and Harden was still like significantly more quicker and more athletic back then, but he had that ability to get a few easy looks at the rim or just get to the free throw line, which is the easiest of looks, especially for a guy like Harden, where for now, I am a little bit more skeptical about Kevin Durant's ability to do that. But like you said, it could very well be the injury.
Yeah, it's funny because I was talking about this a lot in the Nuggets playoff run, this idea of like shot value per possession and what a defense is willing to give up before they go into rotation. Like, and that's the thing, like you almost have to exist in rotation against Denver because it's like, oh, like these Jokic short roll catches are worth like 1 1/3 points per possession. Right. And these Jokic post ups on an island are worth like 1 1/3 points per possession. Like that's a 130 offensive rating
since Dirk.
Like, yeah. You can't, ridiculous. But then you're in this predicament where every single one of their weak side shooters is deadly too. So they put you in this really tough spot. And like, but let's look at the Suns series. Okay, Aaron Gordon, it turns out, is actually pretty good at contesting KD jumpers, right? And so now it's like, oh, like he's only getting like 0.95 points per shot on this tough pull-up jump shot that he's taking. And we can sink Jokic a little bit further back now, and we don't have to get into rotation. Right. And then it just becomes this like cascading effect. And like that's the thing with Steph Curry. That's why teams panic chase him everywhere. It's because if you let him play, the like straight up coverages, he's going to kill you for like 1.3 points per possession. Like it's untenable. And so that's where. I know we all hate on Jason Tatum for this, and he's gone too far in the other direction to where he's like too much threes and layups. Yeah. But although shout out to Jason Tatum, he's actually having a very good postseason attacking from the post. But like I almost want to see KD take a few more pull-up threes. I almost want to see him attack the rim more just to balance that out a little bit better, because that's when you start to get to the point where like, okay, now we have to panic chase him or trap him on these pick and rolls and stuff. And when the Nets offense was at their best last year, it was when KD was constantly getting blitzed. And the only way you're going to constantly get blitzed in pick and roll is if you're torching teams when they don't. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I mean, Dame can't make a pull-up jump shot to save his life in preseason, and I think he'll be fine. I think he'll figure it out and be fine. But guess what? If he shoots really inefficiently on those shots this year, like teams are going to be able to guard the Giannis Dame pick and roll a little bit easier than you would think.
And with the Tatum thing, it's crazy how he has that offseason working out with Kobe, and it's straight 20.5-foot pull-up fadeaway jumpers, no threes, no layups. And now, like you said, it's to the point where, no, Tatum, you can take a mid-range jumper every now and then.
Yeah, well, like a lot of the biggest shots he made during the 2022 postseason run were mid-range jump shots, and
Yeah.
and that's the thing. And like again, yeah, you never want it to be your bread and butter, but if you tell the opponent essentially through your actions that you are unwilling to use 80% of the floor, then you make yourself easier to guard, especially when in a 7-game playoff series, a single perimeter defender gets to see all of your hesitation moves and crossovers and hard right steps and left steps and gets to see them 75 times in a week. You know what I mean? Like you just become easy to guard. I don't think that's the right strategy.
So I didn't plan on talking about this, but I think this is an interesting point you brought up, which kind of devolves into like those Houston teams, which were only layups and threes. Even like Alabama's basketball team with Nate Oates is to the extreme. We're only shooting layups and threes. Like I'm fine with that for like role player X or role player like just random dude. But if I have Jason Tatum on my team, for example, I have Devin Booker, so let's talk about the Suns. It's coaching malpractice to say, hey, Devin Booker, you're really, really good at this part of the floor. How about you don't shoot that shot? So for random role players, no, I think it is definitely just math. I think it is more efficient to shoot, to take as many shots as you can at the rim or on threes, or just anything off a paint touch in general. But I do also believe at the same time, like if I have a great player that thrives in a particular part of the floor, it's kind of coaching malpractice to say, hey, how about you don't do what you're really good at? Like telling Anthony Davis not to shoot that like 16, 17-foot elbow jumper. Like telling Andy not to do that is coaching malpractice because that's what he really, really is good at.
Yeah, well, and so it's a delicate balance because like just do the math. So AD is probably, even if he shoots much better than he did last year, which I expect him to, and he has done so in preseason, even if he shoots much better this year, he might shoot in the mid to high 30s from three, and he's probably going to shoot in the mid to high 30s or mid to high 40s on his mid-range jump shot, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be what, 0.95 points per possession on that shot from the mid-range. Not an efficient shot, technically, by the books. But a couple different things. First of all, half-court offense is inherently inefficient. Like the best half-court offense in the league last year was the Dallas Mavericks, and I think they were at a 105 offensive rating. So it's not like half-court offenses are typically as efficient as you would think. And secondly, like you have to let a guy play basketball. Meaning, like, you can't have a guy too far in his head. Yeah, you can't have a guy too far in his head. And, like, here's the thing. Do I want AD taking 8 mid-range jump shots a game? No. But if he takes 3 or 4 of them, that keeps the defense honest and makes it so that when he's in a specific situation, the defender is at least thinking about it. Or, like, hey, it's the final minutes of a close game, and AD's in rhythm on this shot because he's taken it 2 or 3 times. Like, I'm good with that. But yeah, like if I'm looking at KD's shot diet and he's taking 18 shots a game and in the regular season, 11 of those are pull-up twos, like I'd almost like to see him cut that down to like 7 or 8, almost as a preparation for the postseason and understanding that he might have to be attacking some different ways when he gets to that point.
Yeah. And to your point about being in rhythm and keeping the defense on, that's really what I think Darvin Ham meant when he said, hey, AD, shoot 6 threes. Like, not literally shoot 6 threes, but just have that confidence to, I'm in rhythm every time, all right, I'm going to shoot it. Just to have that confidence, and like you said, to keep the defense honest, which is super, super important. Let's go East. The 2 top dogs are the Celtics and the Bucks. I tweeted this out after the trade for Drew. I like the move a lot for Boston. I kind of have a little bit more question marks about them than I did beforehand, still acknowledging they got better. I think there'll be moments where they are still going to be really inconsistent because I think Drew can be really inconsistent offensively. Jason and Jalen, I still think have a ton of inconsistencies. You're relying a ton on 30 or 50-year-old Al Horford to be good for you. Kristaps' health is always just looming question mark, but like they definitely got better, especially if they're able to keep everybody healthy. What were your like overall reactions to the whole Dame trade to Milwaukee and ultimately getting Drew for Boston as like a counter move to what Milwaukee did?
So on the Boston front, like I just think they're a better version of what they've always been. Which I think is a good direction to go. Like there's been a lot of talk about like, oh, Boston needs to, get the ball out of Tatum's hands at the end of these games. And it's like, to who? Like, who are you giving the ball to? Like, I always thought that was, like when they're like, oh, Malcolm Brogdon, he's going to come in and he's going to fix all the problems. And look, I thought after the finals too, and this was something that I've learned about the game in recent years. I remember thinking the same thing, like, oh, here comes Malcolm Brogdon. It's aggregate ball handling. They'll be better. And then you keep finding out that it's like, oh, wait, here we are again at the end of a big playoff game and Tatum has the ball. So, like, at the end of the day, it is your top end ball handling that ends up kind of determining things. And yes, they have upgraded at point guard. I think Drew Holiday is literally just a better version of Marcus Smart, a much better version. Yeah. And then obviously Kristaps Porzingis is like I don't want to just say he's a better version of Robert Williams because they're a totally different player, but he's a better player than Robert Williams, right? So you've upgraded at center and you've upgraded at point guard. But more or less, it's the same predicament. And at the end of these games, it is going to get into a half-court shot creation from your very best player. I thought the Knicks game last night was actually kind of a good example of this. Like, they looked like the best basketball team ever assembled for about 1 3/4 of a quarter.
Yeah.
They had like 78 points with like 2.5 minutes left or 2 minutes left. And then like they just straight up from that point to the end of the second quarter, all the way through the beginning, first shift of the third quarter, they looked like the old Celtics, where they were stagnant and the ball wasn't moving around as much and they weren't getting as much dribble penetration and their offense kind of fell to pieces. Now, again, it's preseason. I'm not trying to overreact to anything, but my point is like, I just think they're going to be a better version of the Celtics. I think they're going to have these crazy highs. I actually think they're going to be the best regular season team in the league this year by far. I think the West is going to kick the crap out of each other and they're all going to have mediocre records. I think in the Eastern Conference, we'll talk about the Bucks in a second, but like Dame and the Bucks, I think gave up depth and a little bit of their defense that can carry them through the 82. And I think they've raised their playoff ceiling as a result, but I think they'll kind of go down a little bit of a level in the regular season. So I feel pretty strongly that the Celtics are going to have the number 1 overall seed with a huge gap, like legitimately 5 games over the second best team in the league. But when they get to the postseason, I do think it's going to be a lot of the same stuff we've seen. And it's going to come down to, can Jason Tatum out execute Dame in a playoff series at the end of these close games? Can he out execute if he gets to the finals a LeBron or a Nikola Jokic or a Kevin Durant or you get the point. So like I do like the moves and I do think it was the right direction to go, but the Celtics will kind of crack their current ceiling and get over the top as soon as Jason Tatum takes that leap as a half-court shot creator and not a second sooner, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. What was your thoughts on the Bucks deal for Dame?
It's looked ugly in the preseason, but just because Dame can't make any shots right now, I think he looks a little out of shape. He's leaving a lot of stuff short on the front of the rim. I don't necessarily think that means anything other than the fact that Dame is in his mid-30s and isn't hitting the offseason like it's, 2013 anymore. You know what I mean? Right. So like I'm not worried about them from the standpoint of looking somewhat mediocre in the regular season or in the preseason. I do think in the regular season, they will have some issues just with the night in, night out grind of the 82 without Drew. Because like when you have a really solid defensive foundation, it's so much easier to win regular season games than it is to like, oh, Dame. Like they're going to have some games where Dame goes like 2 for 12 on his pull-up jump shot and they just lose, like they're going to have some games like that. But at the end of the day, like I just trust Giannis and Brooke and Chris like to just turn these playoff games into rock fights. And I just give the Bucks a much better chance of winning a rock fight with Damian Lillard on the team. Like it's like if you really look back to that 2022 playoff run, and even this last one with the Heat, which was a weird series, obviously with Giannis's injury, but they basically lost the series in clutch time in the Heat series. Like they had like a 77 offensive rating in their 2 clutch games that they played against the Heat. And like, it just turned into Giannis not being able to beat Bam off the dribble and having to take hook shots and he can't make them. And like, those are just going to turn into higher possession plays with Dame or higher percentage plays. And then the other huge part of it too, is like Giannis has legitimately gotten fatigued in these last 2 playoff runs, especially that 2022 playoff run against the Celtics. Like by game 7, he was cooked. Like he was literally cooked.
Especially with Middleton's injury.
Oh, yeah. And so, like, I love the idea of Dame taking on the half court shot creation like as like a responsibility almost, and just telling Giannis like every time you catch the ball off of a defensive rebound or off of an inbounds pass after a make, just go try to run and dunk it. Like just go do
Run
that
and dunk.
because literally he's never going to get he's not going to be nearly as fatigued without the high half court shot creation responsibilities on the table. So like I think the Bucks are going to have a lot more ugly moments, especially early in the regular season, but I think they're still just a touch better than the Celtics because of that Dame piece and their ability to out execute them at the end of games.
There's a bunch of stuff going around about how, the Celtics have the Damian Lillard stopper with Jrue Holiday, because they're referencing the 2018, was it 18 or was it 17? I think it was 17.
Yeah, something like that.
The 17,
I think it was actually 18, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong about that.
Okay, one of those 2 years where the Pelicans faced the Blazers, 3-6 matchup, and Jrue Holiday had Damian Lillard in hell. But if you just look at Damian Lillard back then, compared to even the past few years, and Dame will say it, he added the range to where you have to pick him up literally from half court, which he was a great shooter then, but there wasn't okay, as soon as Damian Lillard touches the ball, as he's crossing half court, I have to pick him up here, and just his range to where if you sag off for some stupid reason, he'll pull up from 35 feet. So I think the notion that I think he might be even a better playmaker than he was then too, which is another underrated thing. So I think the notion that the Celtics have the Damian Lillard stopper is kind of ridiculous. Now, do they have the best shot potentially in the East? Probably, right? In terms of like just best shot at one-on-one game on the line. We got to get somebody for Dame. They probably got that guy in Jrue. But Damian Lillard stopper, literally, with Damian Lillard's playing really well, you just have to pray that he just ultimately. Do you remember? I think this might be one of the first Laker games after the deadline last year. We're in Portland.
Oh yeah,
Dame just goes effing crazy, and he could not miss. And I'm literally watching the game. I'm just praying, please, Dame, just miss or just go out of the game, because if Dame's on a heater, which he's been a really good playoff performer, and that's with him as the one, and not having to play with like the third or second best player, depending on how you view it, in Giannis. He's been this great playoff performer, and now he has Giannis too. I'm super high on the Bucks upside in the playoffs, like you said, and Middleton as a number 2 half court creator is another big plus, I think, come playoff time. So much so I do have the Bucks representing the East and making it to the finals, as long as they're able to stay healthy.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, here's the thing. If you see repeat playoff failures, that's probably an indicator of something. Like Joel Embiid just tanking every postseason, probably an indicator. James Harden, we can talk it
Sure.
to death, but like the singular embarrassing playoff failure almost always is like a catalyst for a massive improvement from a basketball player. Like, and it's crazy how often you'll see that in NBA history. Like even going back to like LeBron James in 2011. Like everyone always talks about that, and it's like, oh, but the 2011, it's the biggest black mark on his resume. And I want to be like, he's literally not what he is today without that loss. Like it was like he had to be utterly embarrassed to push his work ethic to even another level above what he was always considered already considered one of the hardest workers in the NBA. I mean, like literally Damian Lillard got embarrassed in that series.
It was bad. It was
bad, but he reacted to that by making significant improvements, and now he's a significantly better half-court shot creator. I mean, look at D'Angelo Russell this preseason.
Completely different player.
I am absolutely certain that he was so embarrassed by Bruce Brown that he worked harder this offseason than he has at any point in recent history. This is not an uncommon phenomenon in the NBA, and like I don't really like clinging to those sorts of things, because I think like more often than not they can identify or kind of like signify a strength in a player rather than a weakness. And like here's the thing, like if it's a close game late and Drew's on Dame and Brook is coming to set that ball screen, or Giannis is coming to set that ball screen, you don't get to point back to 2018 to get him to miss that shot. Like at the end of the day, like that's the beauty of basketball. You live to fight another day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get back to the NBA as a whole now. Jason, who would be some of your biggest sleeper teams to watch out for? Maybe not a title contender, but a team that you're just super in love with that you may feel doesn't get enough recognition, or you think that could make a sneaky run even in the playoffs.
So I'll give you a couple. Everyone says the Thunder. Obviously, the Thunder is an obvious one. I'm a huge fan of the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think they
Yeah,
have this really unique combination of top tier perimeter defense combined with an elite rim protector. Like I'm really excited to see lineups with like Anthony Edwards and Nikhil Alexander Walker, with Jaden McDaniels, Kyle Anderson, and Rudy, and just them just absolutely smothering
jeez,
teams. And then I really do think Ant is poised for like a MVP type of season. I don't think he'll win it this year, but I think he'll be in the top 5 of the MVP voting. So they're a team that I really like. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I really like I have higher hopes for the Atlanta Hawks this year. Not as like some sort
okay,
of contender, but I think they're just going to be oriented better as a 4-out 2 or 4-out 1-in type of team without John Collins.
yeah,
Like, they had some severe problems with spot up shooting last year, specifically like getting John Collins was legitimately the worst spot up player in the NBA last year at volume. Like he was getting something crazy like 0.8 of a point per possession when a
sheesh,
defender was closing out at him. And so, like, what's crazy is they had the 8th or 9th best offense in the league despite having horrible spacing. DeJounte Murray struggles to play off the ball. Like DeAndre Hunter is like their best off ball player in the lineup, and he's like only okay. You know what
yeah,
I mean? So like Sadiq Bey, actually like a really solid spot up player who can attack closeouts and is actually pretty decent if you put him in the weak side corner. Is it AJ Griffin? I think is the other one.
yeah.
That the wing that they have that shoots pretty well.
Even Kobe
I just
Buffkin,
think
who I loved in the draft cycle
the
that they
lefty
picked up. Yeah,
dude, he's literally one of the best rim finishers I've ever seen. Like it's kind of
yeah,
crazy to watch him around the rim. But like I just think orienting that team as like a 4-out 1-in, like we're actually playing perimeter players alongside Capella and Onyeka Okongwu. I just think they're going to be oriented better. I think they're going to go from being a team that was like a fringe play-in team last year to like being more in that 5-6 range this year.
yeah. I absolutely hated the Hawks heading into last year. There was a ton of hype about Trey and DeJounte Murray heading into last year. And I said, nope, don't see it. And happened to be one of my better takes from last season. I similar to you, I like them a little bit more, not in the you know, title contender or even like second tier where I really think the Cavs are. And I do really, really love that Cavs team this year. If like Evan Mobley can kind of take that next step. Darius Garland even finally being fully comfortable playing next to Donovan Mitchell, where I think he already had that breakout the year before, but then getting adjusted to a very ball dominant player, I think took some adjusting. I mean, you still saw the moments. What was it where he had was it 56 in a random game Donovan missed last season earlier in the year? Like
He
be
can
able
get
to
crazy hot.
yeah, he can get crazy also be able to play next to Donovan. I think they're like that tier 2 team, but Atlanta's gonna be a lot better this year. And I think the world of Quinn Snyder, especially in the regular season. So they'll definitely be a better team. I really love Indiana this year. I love Halliburton. I think Carlisle's also a really good coach. I love Matherin. I love Jarris Walker, who they picked up this year in the draft. I don't know how much he'll play. They got a bunch of just my guys on their team, so I'm gonna naturally kind of root for them a little bit in the East. And then in the West, I don't know if this is a sleeper because I don't think they'll make I don't even think they'll make the play in. But I think Utah is a lot better than some people are giving them credit for. Like I'm
They
saying,
have players.
prediction list with Utah is 15th in the West. I'm like, Utah's a really just solid team that's going to be in a lot of scrappy games. I think Will Hardy's a really good coach. I think Lauri Markkanen, I'm kind of curious to see how much of if he can replicate how great he was last year. But I think John Collins will be fine here. I like Walker Kessler a ton. I think if Keontae George, who's a guard they drafted this year, I don't know how much he'll play, but if he could somehow be their long-term lead ball handler, that's going to be a massive plus because that's the one thing I look at this roster for Utah and I say they're a guard away from being something like that worth really watch, and not even worth watching, but worth being worried about. Because Florey's good. I mean, they have THT too, but they have some
all their guards are like ball hogs. It's like THT, Colin Sexton, and Jordan Clarkson. It's like, can you imagine playing in that backcourt?
Just add like some semblance of a playmaker to this team, and we're cooking. Even Keontae George is like they're just complete ball hog.
He's a little bit of a shot chucker. Yeah. Like the Pacers is a really interesting one to me because they kind of are the embodiment of one of my long-standing NBA theories, which is that super fast teams are such a pain in the regular season to play against.
Yeah.
Like it almost reminds me a little bit of the Wizards, like at the peak of like John Wall and Bradley Beal, where it's like,
ooh, Halliburton and Ben Math.
And Ben Mather, and then Bruce Brown brings a lot of that, like just sheer straight line athleticism. It's so like when you like, because in my opinion, one of the biggest drivers of success on a daily basis in the regular season is effort level. It's one of the big reasons why I think defensive rating matters. It's less about how good your defense is and more about just how much you care about playing hard on a daily basis and establishing good habits. And like the thing is like on a nightly basis, it's like, okay, you just played an East Coast back-to-back on Sunday, Monday, where you played the Cavs and the Pistons, and then you had Tuesday off, and now you're Wednesday in Indiana, and your legs are a little tired. And like it's the middle of the second quarter, and they've already had like 6 runouts for layups in transition, and they're driving and kicking you to death. And everyone's looking around at each other, and you're like, man, we just feel old tonight. Like that's what the Pacers can do to teams, and that's what they did a lot last year. And everyone's like, oh, they're too small. It's all these guards, and it's like, yeah, will that stop them from winning the title? Of course. But like, it's not going to make them any easier to beat in a random game in February. I promise. They're going to be a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that Indiana team. Orlando's really, really fun too. And I think if they had any perimeter player that could hit a 3 consistently, that'd be really, really good. Like Paulo, very like to the point where I'm daring Paulo. Shoot, France is cool, but to like France is our best shot at hitting a perimeter shot somewhat consistently. Yeah, give this team. Anthony Black is great, but he can't shoot. So like,
yeah.
Oh man,
yeah. Wendell Carter Jr. might be the best shooter in the starting lineup. That's a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem, legitimately. Because I think they're starting like Jalen Suggs. I'm like, okay, we're just completely going all defense. Nobody cares about hitting a 3. Oh man. Before we get to a couple of questions and make our finals picks and get you out of here, Jason. Again, thanks so much for hopping on, man.
Of course.
Do you have any breakout players heading into this year?
Oof. Among the rookie class, the guy that has impressed me the most has been Julian Strawther from the Denver Nuggets.
Julian's awesome.
Guard out of Gonzaga. He was kind of viewed as more of an off-ball guy coming into the league. I think he only took like 50 or 60 pull-up jump shots all season last year. But he's kind of just like come in and been guns blazing as an on-ball shot creator in pick and roll and taking pull-up shots. And he actually had his first like poor shooting night against the Clippers last night, but he actually had a bunch of buckets in the first quarter against some of the Clippers' best perimeter defenders. He's got this deadly floater that he's making almost every time he takes right now. And it's nuts. And like, if you look at the big picture for the Nuggets, like the big question mark long-term is like, what about that KCP spot, you know? And like, and what they really need is a 2-guard to pop. And he kind of seems like one of those guys. I'm a big believer in Anthony Edwards too. Like, I know it's not a big hot take, but like, and I put him at 15 in my player rankings before the Team USA thing. And everyone called me an idiot. And everyone's like, oh, how do you have him over this guy or that guy or this guy or that guy? And like, one of the things that consistently stood out to me is like, even though he was somewhat inefficient during the regular season, both of his playoff series, like he was sticking all his pull-up jump shots and he was generating a ton of rim pressure and he was getting into the paint. And so like, I just have this feeling like he's going to take the league by storm this year. And they're going to win a lot of games and he's going to be at that crazy borderline superstar level. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else I can think of that I believe will pop. Watch out for Rui Hachimura too. I think he's a guy that, especially in the dregs of the season when LeBron is missing games and he's catching starts at the 4, I could see him being a guy that like ends up having a bunch of really big scoring games in a winning context. Yeah, those are the ones that come off the top of my head. Maybe I can think of some. Who do you have on your list there?
I'm a big believer in Devin Vassell from San Antonio. Just a guy that has insane upside to be a really, really good defender, really good shot maker, good playmaker even. I think it was smart for San Antonio to lock him up long term and pair him next to Victor Wembanyama, who's also just insane. This is same draft class, but I really like Dyson Daniels. I was really intrigued by him for New Orleans coming out as kind of this Lonzo Ballish replacement that can, run the offense, set the table for everybody, but also be just a pest defensively and be a really, really good, if not one of the better perimeter defending guards in the NBA, which I think
he's so much better off the bounce than I thought he would be. Like he can actually like dribble and he looks fluid with the ball in his hands. I thought he was just a defender coming out.
Yeah, he's super, super comfortable with the ball in his hands. I had a whole list. Hold on. Jaden McDaniels, I think, is an easy one, kind of similarly to why you said Ant. He has legitimate shot creator upside too, though, which is the most fun thing about Jaden McDaniels. Not like all-star caliber shot creation, but like shot clock's winding down and Jaden McDaniels has the ball. Okay, Jaden McDaniels can go create something for himself with the shot clock winding down. To your point about
he's weird. His offensive game is weird. Like I watched a bunch of offensive tape with him. It's a little bit of that like borderline like Rashard Lewis, herky jerky tall guy energy. But he's just so damn good defensively that like anything you get out of him offensively is just gravy,
I thought him not getting an all defense nod was absurd. I thought it was
how about AD not being a top 5 defensive player in the league? How about that?
Let's talk about Kawhi Leonard being the top 5 defensive player in the league in 2023. Kawhi Leonard has been a top 5 defensive player since at least the injury in 2017. At the very least.
After what AD did in that postseason run, seeing him that low in the GM list makes me think that like there is a very strong anti-Laker bias among the NBA GMs. Because like AD is not a bad guy. It's not like he's a jerk. Like I don't understand why people wouldn't give him his flowers.
Yeah, it's not like he's. And I think Draymond's probably one of the 3 greatest defenders, at least in the past 25 years or so. But like Draymond's kind of a dickhead in the media.
Yeah,
he's not even a jerk in the media.
You kind of understand. Even Warriors fans, half of them don't like the guy for whatever reason.
Right. Oh man, like imagine if Anthony Davis just in practice just walks up to Austin Reeves. Poor Austin. I'm sorry I'm throwing him under the bus. Just Austin Reeves in the face in the middle of practice. Oh my God. But I don't know how you can watch that, just the Memphis series by itself, and say that AD is not one of the top 5 defenders in the NBA. And I'm calling me biased, and I know I am. At the time, I was like that. I thought that Game 6 defensive performance was truly one of the best defensive individual games I had ever seen from a player. And to say that guy is not a top 5 player, but Kawhi Leonard, who hasn't been at this level for a decade almost, is absolutely absurd.
The 2020 playoff run was probably the best defensive playoff run since like
Tim or KG.
Yeah, I was going to go.
Draymond probably has one of these runs.
Yeah, like Draymond probably has a run or 2 in there too, but like the AD in that 2020 bubble was like just on a whole other level. But it just the one thing I would say is like he got killed by Jokic. Okay. The one thing I would say is like, okay, yeah, I thought Bam did a better job on Jokic than AD did.
Yeah.
But like that could also have a lot to do with Eric Spoelstra and just his defensive game planning. He's literally one of the best in the world. And they were doing things like switching to zone to throw them out of rhythm and all this other stuff. So like I don't to me, like I wouldn't put it past AD to also be really pissed off and embarrassed and to come into this season and try to send a message to Jokic. And I wouldn't put that off the table either.
And if that's the logic, I know we're speculating, but even if that's the logic, I don't even think Bam got a vote, which is also kind of absurd because Bam is, if not top 3, for sure top 5 defensive player on the planet. So.
Yeah. Bam was getting shafted in that list too. I literally don't understand it. Like both of those guys just had all-time playoff runs on the defensive end of the floor, and like just like regular seasons dudes who put up stats were getting the recognition. It genuinely is confounding to me.
Yeah, Absolutely crazy. All right, couple questions from some fans on Twitter. First, we start with this one. In which circumstance do the Heat make it to the finals again? And where do you rank Luka? And why doesn't he get criticized even though he missed the playoffs? I do think Luka gets criticized, but Jason, which one do you want to start off with?
Let's start with the Eastern Conference in the Miami Heat question. Here's the thing. One of the biggest advantages that the Heat have had is that every single star in the Eastern Conference looks Jimmy in the eyes on the opposite end of the court and just pees down their leg. Like that,
Right.
that's been one of their biggest advantages. Dame being in the picture now removes that advantage, in my opinion. And like, if we can talk about the holes in the Milwaukee Bucks roster, but they are still significantly more talented than the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat have overcome talent issues every step of the way. And so, like, do I think they could still win the conference? Yeah, if Dame gets hurt and they catch a lot of similar matchups and
Jason
have
Tatum
that go,
gets hurt and Drew Holiday gets hurt.
So, like, at a certain point, like, I've been begging for this on my show forever, but I'd love to see Pat Riley just give them a little more talent. Like, at the end of that, we're nearing the end of this Jimmy Butler prime window. You know, obviously Spoelstra, in my opinion, is the best coach in the NBA. Bam is still young and in his prime, but like, there's a chance here to get a title if you give these guys a little bit more firepower. And I just would love to see them do it eventually.
I think Miami has to make moves at the deadline because right now, I think if you're completely optimistic about the Heat, I think they're the fourth best team in the East. And like you have to, that you're fully optimistic. I don't think they're better than Cleveland. And just in terms of roster talent, right? 7-game series, I would probably pick Miami because I trust Spo more than I do any head coach in the NBA, right? But they're not more talented than the Cavs. They're not more talented than the Bucks or the Celtics. We know that. Are we sure they're better than the Knicks? Probably not even in the regular season for sure, right? So, yeah, I think they got to make a deadline move. And I like Tyler Hero, but Kyle Lowry is a Hall of Famer, in my opinion, at least. That is your backcourt. I just don't think it's going to be enough half-court shot creation consistently come playoff time, where I think it's going to be extremely important when you're facing Damian Lillard, you're facing Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell. I didn't even talk about that. I didn't even say any of the Celtics guys, but you're facing these elite or Trae Young, these semi-elite guards that can create for themselves or for others in the half-court at a high level, which Tyler Hero and Kyle Lowry can't do. I think it's a massive disadvantage for them. And if they had gotten Dame, I would have picked Miami to come out of the East if they had gotten Dame, no matter what they had given up.
Absolutely. No question. And like, I that's why, like, I'd like to see them get creative. I mean, who knows who's going to come available at some point before the deadline. There's always some guy that we never think is going to be available that ends up becoming so. I know this sounds crazy because they're terrible fits for each other from a personality standpoint, but I would love, just as a basketball fan, to see James Harden in Miami.
I was just about to ask you about Harden.
For a couple of different reasons. One, schematically, just, Spoelstra would find a way to make him useful on the defensive end of the floor.
Yeah.
And then offensively, he's literally exactly what they need, a guy who can just eat innings so that Jimmy Butler doesn't end up being your only shot creator over the course of a game. But at the end of the day, that'll never happen. I think they're just kind of holding out, waiting for the right guy to become available at the deadline, and maybe that'll work out. But I'd be really bummed out if I had to watch this same Miami Heat team go again in the postseason.
Yeah. I mean, eventually you just got to pull the trigger. I mean, they've held out on Bradley Beal. They've held out on, or didn't pull the trigger on Donovan Mitchell. They didn't pull the trigger on Damian Lillard. I doubt they pull the trigger on James Harden. Like you said, there's only going to be so many more opportunities that you're kind of running out of time because Boston's going to be here at least for a couple more years. Milwaukee, as long as Giannis is there, they'll be there. Some of these younger teams like Cleveland and Indiana, even, you're definitely running out of time in the East. Second half of this question again is, where do you rank Luka and why does he get criticized even though he missed the playoffs?
So I had him way down at 10 and got in a ton of trouble, but it's because people don't understand the way my lists work. Like, my lists are bragging rights lists. So like, in a vacuum, if I'm ranking players in a vacuum, I probably have Luka at 4 or 5.
Right.
Depending on
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, to me, like, I can't in my right mind in terms of bragging rights. Like to me, it's like my player rankings are more of like an award ceremony. It's like
Sure.
this is the record. Like, you know how like Bill Simmons refers to it as the championship belt when he talks about the best player in the league. Like that's the way I look at it. Like there are still guys who think in a vacuum Giannis is better than Jokic, but like to me, saying that is blasphemy after what Nikola Jokic just did. Like, give the man his flowers for getting the job done. Like, I love Luka Doncic and what he's capable of, but here's the reality. He pouted like crazy the second half of the season, didn't play his best basketball over the final third of the season while Kyrie was out there hooping his ass off, and they missed the playoffs. And like, that doesn't mean that if I don't think that in that same season, if I put Luka instead of Jason Tatum on the Celtics, that I don't think they're going to win the title. Of course, they're going to win the title if they have Luka instead of Jason Tatum. But like, my point is that like in my list is more of like a recognition of what you've actually accomplished recently. And so I gave the nod to guys like Jimmy and LeBron and AD over who made conference finals runs and NBA finals runs, because to me, at the end of the day, that's why we play the games. But yeah, in a vacuum, I have Luka up at around 4 or 5.
I don't even think the biggest problem with Luka is the defense. I think it's the pouting, and I think the reason why I don't really love the Kyrie and Luka fit, like offensively, they're by themselves, they're a great, really, really great player. So we gotta stop underrating Kyrie Irving, the basketball player. I know Kyrie Irving, the off the court player, can say some wild stuff, right? But Kyrie Irving, the basketball player, I think it might be the Ringer or somebody else had him like at 40 or 39. I'm like, there is no way in hell there are 38 players on the basketball court better than Kyrie Irving. But I think offensively, and I hope they kind of figured it out this year, and I am excited to watch Dallas just to see how it looks. But I think the biggest problem is Luka can't play off the ball because, one, he's not this great spot-up shooter. And they found a little bit of stuff last year where you can find Luka on some stampede cuts off of like a ball screen action. And you try to help off of Luka because of the lack of consistent spot-up shooting. But it's such like he's so I'm going to be completely transparent because it's the best way I can describe it. It's like he's half-assing it because he doesn't want to do it, to where it's not consistent at all. And when you're running this like kind of like your turn, my turn, but to where and you don't have great shooting, especially after the trades where you trade DFS, where you trade they trade Reggie Bullock wasn't the best. You missed Tim Hardaway Jr. for some time last year. Then I think that's why the Mavericks collapsed. And then you add on top of that the defense and the pouting and the lack of conditioning at times, which sucks. Because I think Kyrie actually, if he's your worst defender, you're in a really good spot because I think Kyrie competes and he's a solid isolation defender. But yeah, I think that's where Luka is. In terms of if he's at his best, then I agree. I think he's fourth, right behind Steph, Giannis, and Jokic. But you add up all that stuff that we just said, then yeah, I don't think it was crazy to have Luka at 10. And I think that's probably the lowest I would go with Luka. But I don't think it's crazy to say that because of all the stuff we just talked about with Luka.
Yeah, it's like, do we play theoretical basketball or do we play real basketball? You know what I mean? Like that to me is the thing. And like, like, what kind of game are we playing here? If a guy, because let's be honest, he did pout after the deadline when it was clear that they sucked. He started pouting, and he's not the first guy I've ever seen do this. I mean, LeBron has famously had some negative energy, body language, and stuff when his team has lost his chance. Yeah, you know, but it's something that I think has to be accounted for, especially for a guy who's never actually really won at this level before. Yeah. And so like he doesn't get the benefit. You give LeBron the benefit of the doubt because he was a 3 or 4 time champion, you know, when this kind of stuff happened. But it's like I just. Also, the top of the league is just so damn talented. There's like 14 guys that are like bona fide, either superstars or very close to superstars. And so, to me, like you just got to give the nod to the guys who did it last year.
Do you take Luka over guys like SGA and Booker? The answer is still probably yes, right?
In a vacuum, yeah, absolutely. I think Luka's awesome. I mean, I think he showed that in the playoffs last year or 2 years ago. Like I'm a huge believer in what Luka can do, and that was never the point I was trying to make. My thing is like go do it this year, and you'll be back at the top. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And In theory, Dallas could be better this year. I think the big problem they're going to run is, I think just about everybody got better in the West this year. And I think their floor space is going to be a lot better. I think Grant Williams is going to help out a ton. I think Omax, who I loved in the draft cycle, is going to help out a ton if he plays. But for their defense, we're relying on Derek Lively to come in and be Rudy Gobert or something like that from day one. And to be this high-level lob threat and high-level rim protector day one, which he can be, but to maximize this window, you need him to be that now. And I just don't think that's the case, which is also why I thought it was hilarious when Laker fans were clamoring for us to get JaVale McGee, saying, oh, he's this great rim protector and great lob threat. Well, if that's the case, Dallas would have never waived him. So thanks, Laker fans.
Yeah. When they desperately needed somebody who could do that stuff. Yeah, they have a good top five. Like with Josh Green at the 3 and with Grant Williams at the 4, and whether it's Powell or Kleba at the 5. Like I think they can be one of those teams where, like, if they can just keep games close, then obviously they're going to have a huge advantage at the end of games. It's just so much has to go right for them that I'd put them as a very long shot at this point.
All right, last question. With the Lakers' scoring efficiency with Prince as a starter, does it appear the Lakers can keep up offensively with the more high-powered offenses of contending teams like the Bucks, Suns, and Nuggets? And I guess we could throw the Celtics into that mix as well.
I think the Lakers are going to be an awesome offense in the regular season. It's a big question about aggregate ball handling. They just have so many different guys that can run action and so many different advantages and tons of spot up shooting. Taurean Prince ended up being kind of like the perfect guy from the standpoint of, like, Rui's really, really good, but he's a 4 on a team with LeBron. So, like, he kind of has to come off the bench. Right. And then Jared Vanderbilt is like a 3 on defense, but he's like a 4 on offense. And so from that standpoint, and maybe even like a 5 on offense. So, like, at the end of the day, like they needed a forward that they could actually slot between Reeves and Russell and LeBron and AD. And he actually kind of makes perfect sense there. And I really do think between that and LeBron and AD both taking significant jump shot improvements this year, I really do think they're going to have a good offensive regular season. But at the end of the day, if they're going to be able to score the way that the Nuggets or the Suns or the Celtics or the Bucks can in the postseason when things really slow down, I think they need that high-level shot creation piece. And it's either got to come from LeBron or AD taking leaps back to where they were in 2020, or it's got to come from something in the trade market. Because I don't think I like Russell and Reeves, but they're not guys that are going to hit crazy, pull-up jump shots at a consistent rate at the end of big games. You know what I mean? So, like, I do think there'll be a great regular season offense, but their postseason offense, I think, is going to come down to whether or not their stars make improvements.
Well, there's the 2 guys, LeBron and AD, are hitting jumpers. I think I have more optimism in terms of, like, playoff crazy shot making ability. I have more optimism in D'Lo potentially, especially if this version of D'Angelo Russell is somewhat real. Because I think we've seen game 6 against Memphis, game 4 was it against Golden State? He had a couple of really good Golden State games where the defense is super, super tight, and you just need somebody to hit this insanely tough shot 3 or 4 times a night. D'Lo can do that, but the consistency wasn't there. But now if he's able to get to the rim a lot more effectively, which it could be another layer of his offensive game, he could get to the free throw line. He's one of the elements that we didn't see a ton from D'Lo last year. He wasn't he took a step back with the Lakers in particular as a pull-up three-point shooter, where he was closer to 39% with Minnesota, I want to say, or 38%, something crazy from 3. And in the playoffs, it was around 31% for the Lakers, and overall, it was like 34.5 or something like that. Maybe I'm percent off or 2 either way. But if you can get D'Lo back to that insane number where he was with Minnesota or somewhere near that, and be this elite spot up dude, which I think might be, or at least last year's version of D'Lo, what's his best value is how damn good he was as a spot up 3-point shooter, which is why him and Austin and him and LeBron work so well together. I think he's the guy out of those 2 guards that would be more likely to take that leap in terms of playoff shot creation.
Yeah, like, you could make it up as a group. I mean, like, it's unrealistic to expect AD to ever shoot as well as he did in the bubble again, because it was just such high level shooting. And LeBron, LeBron, I think, can get back to where he was in the bubble because that wasn't really that great. Like LeBron's never been just outside of like the 2018 postseason. I've never
He
really
just
felt
hit
like LeBron
everything.
did everything. He's what LeBron has always just turned himself into a guy that you have to guard out there. Like he
Yeah.
can make the shot, right? And that would be the devil's advocate case to what I said, which is like maybe AD just gets back to the point where he's at least respectable as a jump shooter. LeBron respectable as a jump shooter, and then D'Lo and Austin both just get a little better than they were last year. Is that enough to lift them over the top? Maybe, because I'm not a big believer in revisionist history. I'm not trying to say that the Lakers almost beat the Nuggets. That's not what happened. The Nuggets kicked their ass, but they were right there in all those games. And
Yeah.
so, some Laker fans will be like, oh, like, 4 close games, maybe they just break differently. No, it's like the reason why they beat you all 4 times, though, is because when they get into those situations, they are much better at it than you. Like, that's
Yeah.
the thing, right? So, like, but if they have some kind of group aggregate improvement in their shot making to the point where as a unit they hold up better in those situations, then you win 2 of those games. Now it's game 5 in Denver, and it could go either way, right? So like
Right.
that certainly brings them closer. And to your point about D'Lo, it's all intricately connected, in my opinion. Like him being more explosive downhill just simply buys him more separation on pull-up jump shots.
Yeah. Where I thought he was super overrated in terms of his separation ability.
Exactly. And so if he has more separation and he's getting better lift, like he's just going to have a better chance of knocking those shots down. So like, yeah, like it's on the table, but like I feel pretty good about having the Lakers as second in the West, but it would take a lot for me to pick them over the Nuggets. Like I'd have to see a lot from them this year offensively to think that they can hang in that environment.
Let's talk about it. What are your finals predictions as of right now before the season starts 2024?
So I still lean Denver. I don't think they're a significant favorite. Like I was trying to break this down in my Nuggets video, but like a couple things. Recent NBA history tells us they're probably not going to repeat. Like we haven't even had a repeat conference champion since the KD Steph Warriors. Like the last team to win their conference twice in a row was literally KD Steph, Andre Iguodala, Klay Thompson, or Draymond Green. So like that's how infrequent that even happens. But even above and beyond that, like they're just not separated enough, and there's too many other great teams. However, there's no individual team that I can look at and make a better case for than Denver. So, like for instance, Boston, I still am worried about their half court shot creation. Milwaukee, now it's a point of attack and depth issue, right? Lakers, point of attack and offensive shot making issue. Suns, just everything involving the physicality and dirty work in the game of basketball, right? Like they all have these big question marks. And like Denver's big question mark is like, is their defense good enough? But like last year it was. And so, and now mind you, an important context there is they faced the Heat, the Lakers, and the Timberwolves, 3 of the worst offenses in the league last year. But they definitely defended well enough. And so to me, they're clearly the safest bet. They deserve to be the favorite. I would pick them over the Bucks in the finals at this point. But gun to my head, if I had to choose the field or the Nuggets, I'd take the field in a heartbeat.
I would take the field in a heartbeat as well. I'm gonna be biased, and I'm gonna go Lakers Bucks as my finals pick. I think the Lakers are the second team that I feel the most safe about, and maybe it's because I just trust LeBron James still, even at this age, maybe to a fault. And I really do think that if he's able to just stay healthy, I think his jumper will be relatively back. Maybe not like it'll never be 2018 or even I think the first Russ year. He was a really, really good jump shooter, especially on threes, where he was like a 38% 3-point shooter or something near that mark. I don't think it'll be that, but can we get 36% pull-up 3-point shooter back in like a 37% on catch and shoot guy, where last year it was like 30% on pull-ups, 30% on catch and shoot, and everything. So with the lift back, I think we'll be able to take in the regular season. I think you have more innings eaters. You have D'Lo for a full year, which I think is what he's here for, honestly, to eat innings in the regular season. Rui can eat some innings for you in rest or in the middle of a game even. I'm also more optimistic that the Lakers will tap into LeBron's off-ball ability, where I wrote an article about this a little while back. I think he's one of the 5 or so best cutters in the NBA that I want to see Darvin Ham just exploit to the fullest, where like if you hit them on a stampede cut, like they offensively, they beat Memphis off of just stampede cuts from LeBron, especially post game one, where he gets to make these split-second decisions as a finisher at the rim where you want to commit. Okay, cool. I'm going to just kick it out to, instead of it being Jared Vanderbilt, I'm going to kick it out to Taurean Prince, who's like a 45% catch-and-shoot dude when open. So I'm super optimistic in that, and I'm going to be optimistic that the Lakers shot creating does marginally improve enough to where they are able to get through the West and get through some of these teams. The only team, like I said, I would pick against the Lakers is Denver. I think Phoenix, like you said, anything physical or defensive minded, I don't trust them at all. Golden State, I think we match up really, really well with them. Memphis, if they're able to figure everything out finally, I think would be another team that I think is also getting really disrespected because of the Ja Morant thing, but they'll be fine. And Desmond Bane's a stud. Minnesota is actually the other team that I am a little bit nervous about if they're able to get everything to click, because they have the capability of being that top 10 defense, like you said earlier, with Ant, Jaden McDaniels, and Gobert kind of anchoring it. But if they're able to make the Cat Gobert fit less awkward offensively, that even makes their offensive firepower and potential go up even higher to where they realistically could be a top 10 offense, top 10 defense with Mike Conley kind of setting the table. So I think it's Lakers Bucks, in my opinion, at least. If not, it's probably like Denver, Milwaukee, like you had it.
I'm a big believer that the Lakers can win it. I want to be clear. Like I think all four of those teams, all five of them, are like this close to each other, and they all have that capability. Like, I mean, I was texting with our friend Pete from Laker Film Room the other day.
Hey, shout out to Pete.
Yeah, and like we were talking, and we were talking about how like this could also go the direction where the Lakers just kill everybody. Like that's on the table.
That's on the table.
It's not. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but like it's on the table. Like that could be the direction this goes, and like, but the same could be said for all of these teams too.
Yeah.
Like there's that defending champ. Every Nuggets player looks like they're in great shape. Like they came in locked in, ready to go, right? Like obviously the Suns have that same kick everybody's butt potential. The Celtics have that potential. The Bucks have that potential. The Bucks are the only team where I feel pretty sure they're going to have an uneven regular season. Like I really do think they're going to have. And the Suns are that's a good point actually, because the Suns don't have that defensive front line piece, so they could have that as well. But yeah, like I'm a fan too. Like the Lakers are. I'm not a traditional Lakers fan. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, so like I root for the Lakers because I'm a big LeBron James fan. But that said, like I have a rooting interest there too, and so obviously like that can cloud my judgment a little bit. But at the same time, I think I'm in the position where like I genuinely feel like the public underrates the Lakers. Like I genuinely feel that way. But at the same time, like I'm like, they're not quite as good as the Nuggets either. Like I think a lot of people are having trouble separating the entirety of last year's season from what happened after the deadline, which is after the deadline, they won 18-8 with LeBron barely playing. And then they beat like a dominant regular season team in the Grizzlies without home court advantage. And then they beat the defending champions without home court advantage. Like that's not nothing like that. And then they ran into a really good team and lost 4 close games to them. So like I'm a big believer in the Lakers. But I just give the nod to the Nuggets out of respect. I'm a loyalist of the banner, as my colleague Logan likes to say.
I think it sucks because I think Vanderbilt's going to get played off the floor because of his offense, right? And the fact that he doesn't navigate screens a ton, which is my biggest knock on him defensively, and why some fans try to say he's the top 10 perimeter defender. I can't get there because of the screen navigation piece. But man, Evander was just this 36% three-point shooter and brings everything he does defensively. At the very least, you can play 30 minutes and we'll just switch everything, right? Or if you became this above average screen navigator, because I do think the point of attack stuff is where you can really get at this Lakers team. But I do think we'll see this Lakers team in rotation a lot more. I think LeBron's a great rotator. I think we saw that in the playoffs where LeBron can be in certain roles a really effective defender still. I think obviously AD's great. I think we'll see this Lakers team in rotation more. I think that might be their best shot against Denver. I think that's how they're going to try to beat Denver. So I'm really curious
in rotation.
how in rotation
works.
Yeah, and just pray they shoot worse, especially like you said on on Jokic post-ups, right? And I don't want to drag this out long because I've taken too much of your time already. But the argument going into the series was, oh, we're going to let just AD be AD in the post and, let him go one-on-one with Jokic. And I'm like, that's literally the worst thing you can do, regardless of it could be Draymond, it could be AD, whoever, doesn't matter because, like you said, it was 1.3 or something points per possession, the Nuggets offense, if you letting Jokic just go one-on-one in the post, which is stupid crazy, where even if you doubled or fronted the post and had like a backside helper, which Lakers had some minor success with when it was Rui like fronting the post on Jokic, forcing the over the top pass, and AD kind of meets you there at the rim. Even though it drops to like 0.95, which is still fairly solid, especially for doubling you or whatever, or you're shooting a bunch of pull-up threes or just catch and shoot threes, that's a whole hell of a lot better than being 1.3 points per possession if you let them just cook one-on-one. So I think that's honestly a lot of teams' best shot at being Denver. And I think also, is Jamal going to be that insane? I think that was also the caliber that
They
came
shot
back.
really well. Denver shot really
Yeah.
well. Like there was a chasm. Like the Lakers have to shoot a little bit better, but the Nuggets got to shoot a little bit closer to their north. Like the Nuggets, like hand it to the Nuggets. They played a damn near perfect series. Like, and that's not taken away because that's again, we don't play theoretical basketball. We play real basketball, right? So like, give them the nod. But like, yeah, there's no doubt that played a role. I also think fatigue played a role. Like the Lakers literally had been cooking at like top speed for an extra 2 months leading into that playoff series, whereas the Nuggets did literally the exact opposite and like chilled and basically used the Timberwolves. Everyone's like, oh, the Timberwolves played the Nuggets close. I'm like, the Nuggets literally played serious basketball in that series for the first time in like 2 months. Like, of course it was closer. So like, yeah, I tend to think that there's definitely a pathway to victory there for the Lakers, but they do need a lot of things to go right. And the rotation piece is interesting because again, that is what they're going to have to do to a certain extent. I will say though, like last thing on the Lakers, I'm not going to attach too much realness to it until I see it in the regular season in a larger sample size.
Sure.
But their point of attack defense has actually been better this preseason than I was expecting. Guys like Gabe,
particularly surprising you? I know
Gabe Vincent. Gabe is a good ball pressure guard, which again, when you have Anthony Davis behind you, that's really all you need is a guy that can do what Dennis did, which is like get up underneath ball handlers and force them to drive past you, which is going to force them to make decisions with AD in their face. D'Angelo Russell has sneaky done a decent job. Like he sneaky did a decent job on Dame in that Bucks game
like
the other night, like
in a row.
Yeah, Christie, I think is going to be more about whether or not he can do enough offensively to stay on the floor. But like they've had more guys actually do a better job than I thought they would. And again, not trying to attach too much credit to it until we get into the regular season. But I really do think they have that championship upside. And like I'm saying the Nuggets are the favorite. Let's say I gave them a 15% chance of winning the title, and I would have the Bucks, Celtics, and Lakers all at like 12 or 13%. Like they're all right there. I don't think there's a sizable gap there.
Yeah, I think those are the 4 best teams in the NBA. And as long as Denver's probably 1, I don't really care what the order is after that. Jason, to get out of here, we do this kind of segment with all our guests that hop on. It's called Flip the Table. Wish I had my co-host with me. But essentially, Flip the Table is if we were in person, it'd be more of a actual table. But it basically allows for the guests if they want to plug anything, ask any questions, like close out the show, like flip, like make you an interview for 30 seconds or whatever. That would be the way to end the show. That's how we normally would end the show with the guests. So Jason, I'll flip my table, and I guess the way to do this, I'll just flip the screen. There we go.
All right, Sean, I got a question for you, man. If you had to pick an NBA player that you play most like when you play pickup, who would it be?
Ironically, like Gabe Vincent.
Okay, right on.
Like small guard,
quick ball pressure guard. Okay,
they'll be like they'll get in you and try to defend at an all right level at least. That sucks at navigating screens. That's inconsistent shooting. Has some playmaking ability, but like it's not all the way there. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of the first guard that came to my head.
How often do you play pickup basketball?
I don't play nearly as much as I used to, especially because I'm coaching now too. So I don't. Okay, I mean, I might hop on the floor with some of our players occasionally, but I haven't played like a pickup game actually in a few months, so I feel bad.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I will say like coaching kind of scratches the same competitive itch. And right now I'm still playing a ton of pickup, but like if I ever got to the point where, like, let's say for instance, I did tear my Achilles,
Right.
like I don't know that I would push my body to some crazy extent to try to get back, especially since I turn 33 next year. So like at a certain point, I think I would just devote my resources into coaching, kind of like you did, and hang them up.
Yeah.
But right now I just can't get enough of it. I can't stop.
Yeah. No, it's definitely like it's weird. It's weird, especially because they're teenagers, right? But like trying to instill to a certain extent, like the same like competitive itch, which a lot of them do have. I'll give them some credit, right? But when you feel like it's not all the way there, it can definitely be a little bit frustrating. So there is definitely like that same competitive itch as a coach that that has to be there. Because I mean, with any sport, even with like I think that's life in general to a certain extent. Like there is like a natural, even with stuff like this, I think there's a natural competitive. It just being a human, like you're gonna if you're in this field, right, and if you're a naturally competitive person and you're gonna peek and see, hey, what is Jason doing over here, right?
Of course, man.
It's natural. So there's definitely like that competitive itch for sure.
Yeah, it's funny because like it manifests in different ways too. Because like you're talking about the players and how they have different kind of personalities. And don't get me wrong, I've noticed that, you know, when I've been coaching, like I'll have players come up to me and be like, oh, like I really want to play in college, and I'll give them the encouraging information and tell them what they need to do. But in the back of my head, I'll be like, dude, you are so far from like the right amount of commitment to understand, and like you have to be delicate because like some kids handle tough love really well, and
Yeah,
then others don't, and you almost have to like lean into the positive
a little
reinforcement
too
side
much.
of things, like,
Yeah,
but like it kind of remind, like it's the same thing when you're playing though, because it's like you'll be playing with a group of guys and like you'll get super frustrated because one of the guys on your team doesn't want to win as much as you do. It's like, thank God I've been able to find a group of guys for my men's league that like all care a lot, because I take that super seriously. And
yeah,
I have a group of guys that used to play in college that I'll be with there. But like, yeah, no matter where you go, that's such an important driver. And to me, that's something that like inherently leads to results, because like I say, like, you need to work hard, but working hard is just easy when you hate losing. Like it's really that
yeah.
simple. Like if you have that sort of itch, and it's a delicate balance, like when you get into that like Tom Brady territory, you can actually push some people away in your personal relationships and stuff. Kobe was like
Yeah.
that a little bit too. So like I'm glad I'm not that crazy competitive that like I have no social life, but like yeah, it definitely is the driving force behind everything.
Yeah. I think the furthest I went was last season. We were approaching state tournament time. So maybe like the first week or so of February, I not fully cut everybody off, but like I'm very active on my friend, like my close friends group chat. I think it went like a week where I didn't say hardly anything. And one of them individually had to call me like, hey Sean, are you good? Are you alive? I'm like, yeah, it's tournament time, like my bad. So yeah, it's there for sure. It's
Well,
really
during
fun.
during the playoffs, same thing. Like when I cover the playoffs, I work every single day,
Yeah.
and all I do is cover the games at night and then rewatch the games in the morning. And like literally, my friends know now. I've been doing this with the volume. I've done 2 playoff runs with the volume now, and like my friends know, like from mid-April to mid-June, I'm just completely off the grid. Like you're just not going to see me,
Yeah.
and like thankfully, like I get to make that up to them in the time around that. But like, yeah, like it's at a certain point, if you want to be good at something, you have to make those kinds of sacrifices.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
luckily, like a lot of my close friends, they understand for sure. So I think that's also super, super helpful too when you're around people that understand and they're yeah.
And our job is very much in everyone's face because it's on social media every day. So there's that.
Oh man. Well, Jason, thanks so much, man. This was really, really fun. Getting to sit down and talk hoops with you, bro. Anything you want to plug before we get out of here, man?
Yeah, just the show. You can. We're actually launching our new YouTube channel tomorrow. It's same thing we're doing. We're just going from the volume feed to our own channel tomorrow. So follow us on YouTube at Hoops Tonight, podcast at Hoops Tonight, and then I do Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the usual stuff. If you're into the weird Star Wars fantasy stuff, that's Two Sons Podcast over here. But dude, Sean, this was a blast, man. We got to do this again sometime.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thanks for hopping on with me, Jason. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up button as hard as you possibly can, and go check out all of Jason's great work. He really does an amazing job covering the NBA. Great dude for sure. All right, everybody. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.